friends, you're in the Military with Summary channel, and in this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. It seems that the most interesting and the most important week of the special military operation has begun. During the previous 12 hours we received lots of very interesting updates, and first let's talk about the President of the Russian Federation and his visit to one of the command centers, headquarters along the front line. So the Russians reported that during the previous 12 hours they managed to improve their positions significantly. Troops are conducting an offensive on a broad front line. Gerasimov reports to Putin on the situation at the front. In November, 3 settlements in Kharkiv region came under the control of the Russian armed forces. Russian armed forces captured about 100 buildings daily in Siversk. Stepnogorsk in the Zaporozhye region is surrounded. Russian armed forces have entered Krasny Liman, with fighting ongoing in the southeastern and eastern parts of the city. The encircled Ukraine armed forces group in the Staraya Skol River area numbers 15 battalions. Furthermore, the head of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation emphasized that up to 2,000 Ukraine Armed Forces soldiers are trapped in the northern part of Dmitrov, while the southern part has been liberated, according to the commander of the Center Group. Russian Armed Forces in Krasnoarmeysk are destroying small Ukrainian groups. Ukrainian prisoners reported being forbidden to surrender under the threat of execution. Ukrainian drones have been recorded attacking Ukrainian soldiers approaching Russian positions with their hands raised. The offensive continues to develop in the direction of Novopavlovka in the Dobropillia region. So Russians during the previous 12 hours gave us lots of interesting updates and insights about the situation on the ground. Now let's talk about these front lines, let's talk about changes, and first let's talk about the Zaporozhye direction. Once again, the chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation reported that the city of Stepnogorsk was completely encircled by the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation. So there is just one position, just one stronghold left under control of the Armed Forces of Ukraine in the most northern part of the settlement, but this stronghold was encircled by the Russians without any chances for evacuation. Most likely in coming days the Russians will finish the battle for this territory. As for the eastern Zaporozhye direction, during the previous 12 hours we received lots of very important updates. Once again, during this meeting, the commander of the group of forces East stated that the Russians has completed the capturing of the settlement of Dobropillia. So based on the report published by the Minister of Defense and the Chief of General Staff, we adjusted the map. This is the situation by the end of the 1st of December, and we received a report that the Russians captured up to 50% of the settlement, and by the morning of the 2nd of December the Russians managed to establish complete control over the territory. And also this morning pro-Russian sources published this video where we can see how exactly the Russians were fighting for the territory of the settlement of Dobropillia. So here we can see lots of FP drone attacks, we can see how Russians were clearing this area, how Russians were moving, and we can see this dense network of the fortifications that was created by the Armed Forces of Ukraine. So the video has 2 minutes and 7 seconds, and in the final part of this video we can see how Russians were raising their flags through the settlement of Dobropillia. So based on this video and based on the report of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation and based on the report of the commander of the Group of Forces East, we adjusted the map. The Russians continued their offensive operation, and during the previous 12 hours, according to different mappers, the Russians managed to also improve their positions in the direction of the city of Gulay-Polye. Furthermore, during the same meeting, the commander of the Group of Forces East stated that the battle for the city of Gulay-Polye has begun. The Russians, according to pro-Russian sources, began liberating of the settlement. So this is the reality in this area, and we see that the front line collapses. Now let's move further and let's talk about the city of Pokrovsk. Here we can see the same story. Today the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, the Chief of the General Staff of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, reported that the city of Pokrovsk was completely captured by the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation. And during the previous 12 hours, 2 videos were published. This is the first video, and here we can see how Russians were moving in the southern part of the city of Pokrovsk. And here we can see the town hall of the city of Pokrovsk, and here we can see strong control of the armed force of the Russian Federation over this territory. So in this video we can see Russians raising the flag in the area of the town hall. Furthermore, the Russians this morning published additional video, and we will discuss this video during the next updates. And according to the another video that was published by the Russian sources, we might see how Russians were raising the flag through the entire city of Pokrovsk. So currently we have no doubts that the settlement was captured by the armed force of the Russian Federation. Furthermore, based on the report of the chief of the general staff, we made small adjustments in the northern part. Now we colored the northern part completely under control of the Russian forces. Furthermore, several neutral mappers improved Russian positions to the west of the city. So this is the situation by the end of the 1st of December of 2025, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 2nd of December. The Russians, as we can see, continue their offensive operation in the direction of the settlement of Grishna, trying to outflank the settlement from the south and from the southwest. Pro-Ukrainian sources also published an article regarding the situation in the Pokrovsk agglomeration, and during the previous days the pro-Ukrainian sources discovered and recorded lots of positions and certain activities of the armed force of the Russian Federation in the gap between the city of Volchansk and the city of Pokrovsk. We are talking about this territory. As you can see, according to this picture, there were at least 4 episodes or at least 5 episodes with the Russian forces exactly in this area, which means that Russians probably have strong control over this territory, despite the fact that we still keep this area either under control of Ukraine and under control of the Russian Federation. So this is the video. Once again, let's take a look at this video of the city of Pokrovsk. Here we can see lots of episodes how Russians were raising their flags through the city of Pokrovsk, in these western parts, in the central, southern parts, in the eastern part, and the northern parts as well. So currently nobody has doubts that the Russians managed to establish complete control over the city of Pokrovsk without any chances for Ukrainians to restore control over the territory. So based on this video, once again, we adjusted just in the most northern part. At the same time, the Russians continue their offensive operation in the direction of the city of Mirnograd. The chief of the general staff of the armed forces of the Russian Federation reported that up to 2,000 Ukrainian soldiers are still on the territory of the city of Mirnograd. Ukrainians control just the most northern part of the settlement. The Russians stated that the southern part of the city was already captured by the armed forces of the Russian Federation. So we believe that, and we probably during this day we will color the southern part of Mirnograd under complete Russian control based on the report of the chief of the general staff. Several pro-neutral mappers made changes in this area as well, and according to the latest changes, the Russians indeed secured the entire southern part of the city, and now the Russians continue advancing further in the northern direction. We believe that in coming 2-3 weeks the city of Mirnograd would be completely captured and secured by the armed forces of the Russian Federation. At the same time, Russians intensified their offensive operation in the Dobropillia direction. During the previous days, additional changes and many changes were recorded exactly in the area of the cities of Belitsk and Dobropillia. So this is the situation by the end of 28th of November, and starting of the 28th of November, we've been adjusting the map almost every single day. Now the Russians are about to secure the settlement of Zatishak and to capture the territories between the city of Rodinsk and the village of Dorozhnyane. So we're talking about the railways. Furthermore, the Russians continue their offensive operation, including operation on the territory of the settlement of Sofiivka. The Russians entered the village several days ago on the 29th of November of 2025, and since that moment, the Russians managed to capture up to 30 or even 35% of the village, and the Russians continue advancing. As for the Konstantinovka direction, during the previous 12 hours we received lots of updates, and the most important is that according to the commander of the group of forces south, the Russians managed to capture up to 30% of the city of Konstantinovka. So a third part of the city is already under complete Russian control. Different mappers adjusted their map, showing additional, let's say, control and additional expansion of the gray zone. Furthermore, just right before we started making the video, pro-Ukrainian sources published this video where we can see how Ukrainians were bombing Russian positions along the Vuglidarska and Kievska streets. So right exactly in this area the Ukrainians were bombing Russians. And based on this video, we will adjust the map. We started making this video, so that is why we haven't managed to make adjustments before the video, but we will adjust the map during this day, and then we will discuss everything details in the evening update. Furthermore, I would like to remind you that just yesterday we got a report that Russians managed to establish complete control over the settlement by the name of Kalinova, which is located to the north of the city of Konstantinovka. And based on these reports, based on this configuration of the front line, we believe that Ukrainians will not be able to hold positions for a very long period of time. As for the Sivers-Liman direction, during the previous nights, pro-Russian sources confirmed that the clashes continue on the territory of the Sivers. The city of Sivers, Russians, according to information we have, secure up to 100 buildings a day, which means that it will take them probably another 10 or probably 20 days before they will be able to finish the battle for the territory completely. Furthermore, the chief of the general staff and the head of the group of forces west confirmed that Russians answered the city of Liman from the east and from the southeast, and that the clashes are taking place already on the territory of the city limits, in the city limits. And as for the western Kupinsk direction, the Russians reported that 15 battalions of the armored forces of Ukraine were blocked by the Russians without any chances for evacuation. And now let's discuss the northern direction, the northeastern part of the Kharkiv region. The Russians stated that they also managed to establish complete control over the city by the name of Volchansk. So if you remember, during the previous days we were talking about the situation. If you remember, I told you that 2 days ago Ukrainians destroyed the flag in the most south part of the settlement, and based on this video we adjusted the map, and during 2 days ago we came to the conclusion that most likely the Russians began the preparation of the video with flags through the city of Volchansk, and we believe that today this video will be published, and based on the report of the general staff we have adjusted the map. So the battle for the city of Volchansk finished. Now the Russians will answer the Kharkiv operational space and will begin offensive operation in the direction of Bielый Kolodец. So we believe that in coming days we're going to get more and more updates about the situation in Ukraine and about the situation along the line of combat contact. But during the previous 12 hours we also received lots of interesting political updates, and the most important is that according to information we have, the former chief of the general staff of the armored forces of Ukraine, Valery Zaluzhny, returned back to Ukraine. He returned back to Ukraine, and as for now it's very difficult to understand what is the purpose of his visit of Ukraine. Maybe he is going to replace Zelenskyy, or maybe he is going to probably take part in the presidential race, which most likely that the presidential race and presidential elections can be announced in coming days by Zelenskyy or by the Ukrainian parliament. At the same time, Zelenskyy yesterday with the visit came to France, where he had meeting with the president of France, Macron, probably trying to get additional security guarantees from France and maybe even personal security guarantees for himself, because Zelenskyy, as I understand, doesn't have anywhere to run, but he needs to, as everybody in the world understands. During the previous day, the president of France made lots of very interesting statements. Macron claims that the coalition of the willing has completed work on security guarantees for Ukraine and now intends to discuss them with the United States. He also stated that the European countries should be present at the negotiation table for settlement of the conflict in Ukraine when the issue of frozen Russian assets comes up. So they were talking lots of things about territory. Zelenskyy stated that the territorial issue at the negotiations is most difficult. Only this question was discussed for 6 hours. Now the peace plan looks better. Furthermore, we got report that Zelenskyy today is going to travel to Ireland, where he is going to have a meeting with Witkov. I would like to remind you that today Witkov is coming to the territory of the Russian Federation, where he is going to present a plan to the president of the Russian Federation. So that is why Zelenskyy will try to have a short meeting with him on the territory of Ireland. Most likely Zelenskyy will once again ask him to probably protect Ukrainian positions and to stand for, let's say, just and lasting peace favorable to Ukraine. But something tells me that Steve Witkov is not going to change anything. Maybe some kind of provocation is going to happen. Very difficult to say. And probably one of the most important update is coming from the territory of Washington. Today, the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, has suspended aid to Ukraine due to widespread corruption in the country. Trump believes that Ukrainian authorities are abusing American taxpayer support, the White House stated. So we see that the political regime, the military forces, and many other important aspects of Ukraine have collapsed this morning, or about to collapse in coming hours. And telling the truth, indeed, there are very high chances that today or these days, the United States of America and the Russian Federation will be able to find a solution how to peacefully settle the conflict in Ukraine, and most likely Zelenskyy will resign also in coming weeks. And that's it for the short video. Military with Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.